It's daybreak. Now let's take a look at what's making the headlines on the papers around the world this morning. We begin with our sister publication this day, and it is focusing on the approval by the Nigerian Senate of the 13.98 trillion naira 2022 budget projection. It's also reporting that the Senate is retaining, or the budget is retaining 8.36 trillion naira revenue target. Benchmarks oil at $57 per barrel. And of course, the exchange rate for that budget is 410 naira to a dollar. Other headlines on the front page, an exclusive from Arise News making all the front pages this morning as they interview with the governor of Ondo State, Akeredolu. And of course, this day has an excerpt from there. It's El-Rufai. It says Akeredolu, El-Rufai's attack on southern governors ploy to externalize banditry. Above the mast plate for this day this morning, the masthead, it's NNPC. Global gas crisis may push oil prices $10 higher in 3 months. These and more you can find in a copy of this day today.
Moving on to the Guardian newspaper. Right there, foreign cargo airlines depart empty over extortion and multiple charges. Another bold headline on the front page, anti-open grazing law. Don't export banditry to the south. Akeredolu replies El-Rufai. Of course, we heard from the governor earlier. Another headline here, Emefiele not cause of Naira's woes, say economists. And finally, from the Guardian newspaper, crisis looms in Kano as Ganduje retains revenue boss, defies legislators.
And moving on to the Punch newspaper, a very busy front page this morning. The big headline here says, Jega Utomi groups and others team up against APC and PDP to unveil party on October 1st. That's the People's Redemption Party, the African Democratic Congress, and the Labour Party to form a new mega party, and they plan to unveil that on October 1st. You can catch up on this story on pages 2 and 9. And on the side of the Punch front page, Ohaneze demands Nnamdi Kanu's release, while IPOB threatens a 30-day shutdown if the DSS does not bring Nnamdi Kanu to court on October 21st. That story can be caught on page 26. Just underneath that headline says 2023 Southern Presidency is sacrosanct. This is by the Afenifere, and that can be found in page 12.
Quickly to the nation. Zoning, PDP North leaders take formula before panel. Also have that recurring headline about the back and forth between the southern and northern governors taking the charge at the governors of Ondo State and Kaduna State on the opposing sides. Above the nameplate this morning of the nation, Nigerian pushing to recover £2 billion loot. And of course, right beside that, 2.3 billion naira cocaine seized at the nation's capital airport, the Abuja airport. The NDLEA, the agency in charge, has arrested suspects. And finally, on the front page, Makinde nominates 5 as commissioners. That's the governor of Oyo State. 5 billion naira debt. AMCON takes over ex-governor's mansion. For details of this, pick a copy of The Nation.
A quick look at the international scene. The I newspaper. Energy bill hike for millions of UK homes. A historic crisis in living standards, and we ignored the warnings. That's an opinion piece by Ian Dunt. And culture still in the I newspaper, while the 80s was music's greatest decade. That's on page 17.
And the Independent newspaper, 2 major headlines here. Boris Johnson, shock at row with Macron. The Prime Minister is said to be astonished by French reaction to the AUKUS military pact. That's the pact between the US, the UK, and Australia. Boris Johnson told his French counterparts to get a grip over that row. Now, another headline here says, unions refuse to back Starmer on party reforms. Now, Keir Starmer wants to change the plans and the Labour's leadership, change the rules, beg your pardon, on the Labour's leadership election, and he's getting a lot of blowback for that.
Well, ministers have admitted they are considering a windfall tax on companies profiting from record gas prices. That's according to The Guardian, the UK Guardian, this morning. The Times is also reporting that 1.5 million households face higher energy bills within weeks after two more companies collapsed amid warnings that prices may not return to normal until 2013.
Now, for the press review, Emmanuel Bello joins us from our offsite studio. Good morning, Emmanuel. Let's start off with This Day newspaper. And we listened to the governor speak earlier, Akeredolu, with comments on the Kaduna State governor on the plans. Well, the headline here says, El-Rufai's attack on southern governors ploy to externalize banditry. What are your comments? What's your response to the governor?
Well, I think the governors are fighting again, and we are seeing it is becoming a trend. Who knows? Maybe some other northern governor is going to answer Akeredolu, and then the bid goes on. So it's a back and forth among the governors, and this started when all the governors, the southern governors, came together and decided that they were charting a course for themselves. They were going to retain VAT, and they were going to sign the open grazing bill into law. And so all of that did not go very well, too well with the northern counterpart who think that, look, in the federalism where we should be one another's keeper and all of that. And then I think both sides are speaking for their people and speaking for what they think is best for business, for their communities. Don't forget that these are politicians, and they speak to what they think their people want to listen to, and they are leveraging on the issues and the confusion to grandstand, to make statements, to pose as leaders of their people, as champions of certain certain values or certain things among their people. So, for instance, El-Rufai would like to say that, look, the North needs that, and then of course Akeredolu will say, no, well, the South is going that way. I think both of them are understanding, but at the heart of the matter is the issues that are under discussions. How best are these arguments, solving some of the problem? For instance, the crisis of banditry. Akeredolu is saying that there's an attempt to externalize banditry. How is the North itself addressing its own crisis? The VAT row, for instance, how is the North addressing that? How are they looking inwards to see how they are going to strengthen their economy in such a way that they are not seen as dependent parasite states on states that are already having enough among their people? So these are the deep crises beyond the back and forth, beyond the grandstanding, beyond the razzmatazz of an open confrontation. The most important thing is how these issues are addressed internally, and how we're bringing some of these issues to a closure. The issues of banditry, the issue of the downward movement of cattle into farms, and the crisis of all the crises surrounding that. Those, for me, are more important. Those are the things that are agitating the minds of Nigerians. And while the governors are trying to speak for their people, or speak to the points that appeal to their politics and their people, Nigerians are still worried about real issues and how they'll be solved.
Definitely. Now, moving on to the Punch newspaper, I want to talk about the big headline here on the front page. It says, Jega, the former chairman of INEC, Atahiru Jega, Pat Utomi, and others are teaming up against APC and PDP to unveil a party on October 1st, a political party. That's it, Emmanuel.
And they are choosing a very good date for that, October 1st, our independence anniversary. And everyone, I think the political cycle will be excited about this, because there's been a big talk about a third push or a third alternative outside the two big parties, PDP, APC. I know a lot of politicians who are excited about a third mega party. This has been in the works, and people have been talking about it. And now, maybe this is the third force that we've been waiting for. But you cannot take away from the strength of both the APC and the PDP. Most politicians would like to say to do business with these two big parties. But now you have great names. You have a former governor on that list. You have Jega, you have Utomi, big names coming together to say we could think of a third force, an alternative to, and don't forget in that same story, more associations are seeking registration as political parties. So, well, are we going to see a situation where in 2023, the PDP and the APC will not be the only thing out there for people to run? Will these parties be able to carry politicians? In some part of the world, politicians even run independently. And so, but what we see here is the dominance or the tyranny of big parties. This is actually a big push by some people to challenge that dominance, that monopoly, in a way that politicians can actually seek for some form of, a platform to actualize their dream in such a way that, these two other parties do not pose as the only ones that, if you're not in the PDP or in the APC, you're out. They are beginning to say, no, there's a third for, and many politicians that I know are excited about this and actually looking forward to it. But the question will be whether whatever is formed at the end of the day, we have the potency, the strength to be able to carry any politician to whatever office they
Well said,
seeking.
Emmanuel, because this will be keenly watched, considering the fact that we had a third force going into the last general elections, but not much of a difference was made. Let's go to the nation. A lot of headlines there. The PDP North leaders are taking their zoning formula before a panel to consider that. But it's the headline above the nameplate I want to look at this morning. One of them there says Makinde, which is the governor of Oyo State, nominating 5 commissioners. We're beginning to see a situation, Emmanuel, in Nigeria where governors are going on ahead without having cabinets. Is that the new normal?
Well, maybe it should be the new normal. But again, I think part of it is also the crisis, we're dealing with. State governments are having to deal with it. I know of a governor who told me one time that, look, Ima, you see, I have to just nominate commissioners, because some of them really don't know what to do with them, because the way it is structured is that the ministry is actually run by permanent secretaries. And so the commissioner is just the political head, is the man that takes the position of the ministry to the ESCO and all of that. In some states, some of these commissioners are actually even redundant, not to speak of the special advisor and the special assistants that are running into hundreds in some of these states and clogging up the whole crisis of expenditure for government. So they're left for some governors, I think, and in most cases, you find a situation where in this country, governors will be sworn in and it will take them like a year or 6 months or so before they swear in any kind of commissioners. And yet the business of governance is going on because the civil service as it's structured is under the permanent secretary and the civil servant. But again, you need to give political positions to people, and that is where the commissioners thing come into place. But in most cases, it's almost as if, the governors are twisted to pick people. And in most cases, it's always a crisis for some of them, how to pick commissioners, what criteria to use. At the end of the day, when the commissioners come in, the problem there will be just how to actually make them effective. We saw the other day Boris Johnson change his cabinet to make it more effective. It's not just about nominating commissioners, but putting them in the right places, energizing them in a way that they can be very effective. But beyond that, really, most states sometimes run without the aids of commissioners. That does not mean that it's not important, but at the same time, if we're talking about cutting costs, you need to also look towards that direction. The issue of keeping too many aids.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel Bello. All a pleasure having you review the papers with us in the mornings. Thank you.